Hi, it's Courtney back again with more Halloween movie suggestions. And I'm delving into my horror movie collection, which is quite huge and extensive. And it grows all the time because I find more and more movies that I want on DVD that I don't already have on VHS. Yeah, I still have VHS tapes. But let's see. I've got a bunch of movies here to talk about. So I'm just going to go down one by one. The first one I have is a remake, and it's the remake of 1980's Prom Night. This is from 2008. This is the unrated version of the Prom Night remake. So it's unrated. There was another version out. I think it's kind of a PG-13. So it's unrated footage not seen in theaters and deleted scenes and an alternate ending. But it's very different from the one from 1980 with Jamie Lee Curtis in it. This one has Brittany Snow in it, and she plays Donna, and she's stalked by a teacher who is obsessed with her and kills her whole family. And so about a year or two later, it's her senior prom, and it's prom night, and the teacher escapes, and he's coming after Donna while she's at prom. So the plot of it's a lot different than the 1980 movie. This also has Idris Elba in it as a detective. So trying to look for anybody else of kind of note. So it's kind of more like a younger cast, and of course the original one had Jamie Lee Curtis and Leslie Nielsen in it. But so it's not really as slashery as the original one is, which I do have that one too. I'll talk about it maybe at a later point. But as far as remakes go, it's okay. It's nothing really special, but I try to give remakes the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they'll do something a little different, and the plot is different. It doesn't even follow the same kind of plot as the original Prom Night. So, but it does have that like new remake kind of feel to it. So I'd kind of say it's more of like kind of like a thriller kind of theme more than it is a slasher. So, but so it's pretty good. I'd check it out. I'd probably recommend the original Prom Night more than that one, but I do have it. So next up, I'm gonna take it out of the little sleeve of it. Another film by Tim Burton. Love Tim Burton films. And it's, of course, Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci. And everybody knows, the legend of Sleepy Hollow, probably from this movie or the Disney version of it. But instead of being a school teacher like in the Disney version and in the story, Ichabod Crane is a constable who is sent to the town of Sleepy Hollow to investigate the deaths that happened there. And the people in the town believe they are the work of the Headless Horseman, a Hessian soldier who lost his head during the Revolutionary War. And so the townspeople think that the Headless Horseman is responsible for all the murders. And Ichabod Crane, played by Johnny Depp, doesn't believe in the Headless Horseman. So he tries to prove that it's an actual person, behind the murders. And I know a lot of people have seen it, and the people who haven't seen it but have seen maybe other versions of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow or the Headless Horseman. It's very different from that, and it doesn't leave anything untied as to whether Ichabod Crane really did disappear into like thin air, or he was killed by the Headless Horseman. But so its atmosphere is kind of very like dull, and so it's huge, so that when there's blood, the blood like is bright and just pops out the screen. So yes, it's very it's very bloody. It is rated R. It says for graphic horror, violence, and gore, and a scene of sexuality. Okay, I always like how they have it, but yeah, it is pretty gory. It's pretty bloody. So I think it's probably one of the darker Tim Burton movies that I've seen. But it's got that gothic horror because it's set around the turn of the century, where it's going to be like 1900 soon. So it does have that classic gothic horror feel to it. So I like Johnny Depp as Ichabod Crane. He gives his own spin on it, but he's mostly like other Johnny Depp characters. I like Christina Ricci in it. She plays Katrina Von Tassel, and it's weird seeing her with blonde hair, but she's really good. It has a lot of good actors in it. It has Miranda Richardson, Michael Gambon, Dumbledore, as most people know him, Casper Van Dien, Jeffrey Jones. It's got a very good cast. There's a cameo, of course, by Christopher Lee, and but it has that dark, creepy tone to it, kind of like a scary story being told to you, and so of course music by Danny Elfman, and it's just I like how subdued the palette of it is, and like I said, when there are scenes that involve blood, it really pops. So if you like Johnny Depp, or you like Tim Burton, or you're into the kind of more gothic tone of horror films, this would be perfect for you to watch. So next up, I've got one of my personal favorite movies, and it's The Howling from 1981, and it's directed by Joe Dante, who went on to do Gremlins, and it has Dee Wallace from E.T. in it, and of course, it is probably one of the best werewolf movies that I've ever seen. It's one of the classics. This came out in 1981, the same time as An American Werewolf in London, and Wolfen, two other werewolf movies, and I think it and An American Werewolf in London, were kind of on the same kind of scale a little bit. Of course, An American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis, has a little bit of kind of like a dark humor to it. The Howling doesn't have that kind of, it has some humorous moments, but it doesn't really go for like the dark comedy. It's more, dramatic, and it's kind of like got this dreamy quality to it, and there's a lot of cinematography in the woods, and it kind of has like this shot to it where everything's kind of like fuzzy a little bit, like, you know, like you're moving in a dream, and it's kind of, you know, it's just, you know, like it's not really happening, but it's really happening. And what it is, the main plot of it is, Karen White, played by Dee Wallace Stone, is a reporter, and she gets traumatized going on a case for this killer named Eddie Quist, and she has a run-in with him where he ends up dead, and she kind of blocks out the traumatic experience of, you know, being around him. So she goes to a retreat called the Colony with her husband Bill, and the people there, you know, try to help her remember what happened, and, you know, some of them are kind of quirky, and, you know, they're kind of like these, like, hometown country kind of people, and but there's of course a howling that Karen hears at night, and you know, she starts getting back little pieces of what happened to her, and of course, you know, it involves werewolves. Everybody knows that by now, and it has, if you've never seen The Howling, it has a really great ending to it, and it's, you know, of course, rated R, so, you know, you've got some nudity, and you have violence, and there are great werewolf transformations in this movie. The score is by Pino Donaggio, and he did the score for Brian De Palma's Carrie. So when you hear the score of this movie, it kind of has the same quality like Carrie, where, you know, like I said, it has like kind of like that eerie, dreamlike quality, where it's like, it feels like stuff's not happening, but it you know, it really is. But that's kind of the atmosphere that the movie brings, and it's a really good movie. Of course, it spawned a lot of sequels, and I've seen them in bits and pieces, but I would just stick with The Howling. I'm surprised that they haven't, you know, remade this yet. I think they have a movie in the franchise called The Howling Reborn, and it's not really like a remake. It's kind of like a, you know, a sequel reboot kind of thing to it, where it was more geared towards like a Twilight audience. But I would just stick with this one. I've seen the others in bits and pieces, except for the third one. It's called Howling 3, The Marsupials. And yes, as the title implies, it's kind of like marsupial werewolves, which is actually kind of neat. But it's more campy than this one is. So I guess between this and American Werewolf in London, I would probably go with this one if you are more wanting a kind of horror, suspenseful kind of atmosphere. An American Werewolf in London has that, but like I said, it's got kind of like a darker humor to it, and I like this one the best. So, The Howling. Again, if you haven't seen these videos before, these stickers mean this is mine, so if I ever gave it to anybody, I would know that this was my copy of it, because it has the sticker on it. So, but The Howling, that's a good one to check out. Speaking of John Landis, we will pop in another movie, and this one has a special Halloween movie night sleeve box on it, but it is Twilight Zone, the movie, and this was 1983. 1983, the year I was born, actually, and it's PG. So, of course, everybody knows what the Twilight Zone is. It was an anthology series from the 1960s, created by Rod Serling. So, in 1983, they decided to make a movie version of it. Later in the 80s, they brought back the Twilight Zone, again, remaking some of the classic episodes for the 1980s. But this was from 1983, and it has a wraparound. Well, it has an opening, not really a wraparound segment, but it has an opening and then 4 stories. And I guess the opening kind of does wrap around towards the end. But so, like in the opening of it, there's these 2 guys driving in a car, and there's Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks driving along, and they talk about the Twilight Zone. And it has a scene in it that the first time I saw it, it did kind of make me jump because I wasn't expecting it. But they talk about it, and then it begins, because like Twilight Zone episodes, you know, there's like a twist, little twist or a shock ending to it. But so there are 4 segments of the movie, and the first segment stars actor Vic Morrow as a bigoted, racist guy, and he does not like black people. He does not like Jewish people. He does not like people from Vietnam. He was in the Vietnam War, and he ends up kind of going to these different periods in times when black people and Jews were being persecuted and stuff like that. So kind of like walking a mile in somebody else's shoes. The segment was directed by John Landis, and it's most famous because Vic Morrow and 2 young child actors were killed in a scene that never made it into the segment. So it's not really my personal favorite because, that incident kind of brings this little pall over it, but it does, teach a good lesson. The next segment is directed by Steven Spielberg. It's called Kick the Can. It's based off an episode from the original Twilight Zone series. It has Scatman Crothers in it from The Shining, or the voice of Hong Kong Phooey, whichever rings your nostalgia bell better. He's an older gentleman who goes to a nursing home with a bunch of other elderly people, and he tries to get them to keep their youthful spirit, even though they're older. And I like this segment. It's so it's not as serious as the first one, and it's not as creepy as the following 2 segments. So it's kind of like a light-hearted breather to it, but it teaches a good lesson about keeping yourself young at heart as you get older. But it also teaches that getting older does have its advantages. Sorry if I kind of stumbled on that a little bit. I was trying to get out exactly what I wanted to say, but I like it. It's a nice segment. And the next one is directed by Joe Dante, who did the Howling that we talked about too, and it's a remake of the episode "It's a Good Life" from the original show. There's a little boy named Anthony, and as he's leaving, he gets his bike ran over by a school teacher, played by Kathleen Quinlan, and she apologizes, and he takes her home to meet his family. You've got William Shallert, the dad from the Patty Duke Show, and you even have Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, as members of his family, and they do everything they can to please Anthony. So he gets to watch cartoons, and they have peanut butter on hamburger buns and potato chips for dinner, and so but the school teacher notices that the family's kind of weird around this little boy, and of course we understand, if you've seen the original, that you have to keep Anthony happy or bad things happen, and they're really creepy things, really awful bad things, and I like this segment. It's creepy, and it has that humor. It kind of reminds me of Gremlins, with a little bit of like a dark comedy kind of twist to it. But the last segment is a remake of Nightmare at 30,000 Feet with William Shatner. This one has John Lithgow as the passenger who sees a gremlin on the wing of the plane, and he totally freaks out. And the gremlin in this really is terrifyingly creepy. I would not want to be on a plane and look out the window and see this thing on the wing either. But whereas the Twilight Zone with Shatner makes it kind of, I guess, creepy by 1960s standard, this one's creepy by 80s standards, and it really would make you think twice about getting on a plane and wanting to look out the window. And but it's really creepy, and it's probably my favorite segment. So it would probably be fourth segment, third segment, second segment, first segment, because a lot of people rate them by the segments. But Twilight Zone the movie is a pretty good movie. So I checked that one out. And next, this was a special edition. Taking it out of the sleeve, because it's got those stickers on it. I found this at Best Buy, and it's special edition of My Bloody Valentine. They released this when the remake came out, My Bloody Valentine 3D, with Jensen Ackles from Supernatural in it. So this was the original one that was made in 1981, and it had to have a lot of scenes cut out of it, because they were at a time when they were trying to take a lot of the more gruesome, gory scenes out of horror movies. Kind of like I said in one of my earlier videos, shortly kind of after the assassination of John Lennon, trying to tone down violence and stuff in movies, and this suffered a lot because it had to cut scenes out. So this special edition puts those scenes back in, so when you're watching it, the quality of the film is going to change and become like a really like grainy and kind of scratched a little bit from the footage that they had to take out. But the plot of it is that in the town of Valentine Bluffs, a long time ago, there was a mining accident. Two foremen of the mine left early to go to a Valentine's dance, and there was a methane explosion that trapped some workers in the mine. And when they eventually found them, one of the mine workers, Harry Warden, went crazy and resorted to cannibalism to stay alive. So they took him away to insane asylum psychiatric hospital, and he escaped, and he came back and he killed the two foremen, and he said that he would never tolerate any more dances on Valentine's Day in the town while he was alive. So it jumps to 20 years later in our modern setting, and they've decided that they're going to have Valentine's Day again. Because it's been a while, and, Harry Warden's gone, so they feel like they don't have to worry about him anymore. But soon the residents, especially the police chief of the town, gets a Valentine where there's an actual human heart in the Valentine box. And so they believe that Harry Warden is back, and after a few murders occur, they decide to cancel the dance. So all of the teenagers, or young people of the town, decide that they're going to throw their own Valentine party in the mines. Because, of course, it's a mining town, and if the town won't have a dance, then they'll just have their own fun. And there's a love triangle between characters Sarah, TJ, and Axel. Sarah and TJ used to go out with each other, and then TJ left to go to Hollywood, California, and while they were gone, Sarah and Axel became an item. So there's a triangle between them, and then, of course, the killings, and, Harry Warden is supposed to be back. If you've seen the remake, but you've never seen the original, you kind of maybe know what's going to happen, but if you've never seen the remake, or you've never seen the original, the twist of who the killer is, it actually is a pretty good one. I didn't see it coming when I first saw it, and then when you kind of learn the motive why, it makes a little bit of sense. And but the ending is a little creepy, and I guess they kind of left it open to making like sequels to this film, but a sequel never happened. But so all the kills, they range from kind of very elaborate to kind of weak, and I guess the ones that have like the most kind of gore and gruesome impact are the ones where the footage is reinstalled that they had to edit out, because most of the time R-rated movies will either get like an NC-17 or an X if there's like too much nudity or gore or violence. So this one is rated R with even with the footage put back in. So I guess maybe it's rated R to today's standards and not to early 1980s standards, but I'm not really sure. But it is a pretty good movie, and it has that same kind of Friday the 13th kind of feel to it in the way that it's shot. But it's a really good movie, and I guess if you're a person who's not really a fan of Valentine's Day, I guess you could pop in My Bloody Valentine and watch it instead of some cheesy romantic movie. Me, I'd probably do both. So My Bloody Valentine, the original. I've seen the remake in bits and pieces. I kind of mostly watch it because I like Jensen Ackles, but it's got Tom Atkins in it too. So it's pretty good. The remake's kind of, like most of the remakes, where it really does center on teenagers that are kind of maybe a little bit closer, because the actors that play like teens in this movie seem a lot older. So, but I don't know. Maybe they're all supposed to be like in their early 20s too. I don't know. But so the next, I've got two more things to talk about because this is running a little long. But mostly, it's because these are like collections. Because a lot of movie horror franchises have lots of sequels to them, And so I have the 8-movie collection of Friday the 13th. These are all the first 8 Friday the 13th films, because they were distributed through Paramount Pictures, which is on the side here. So everything after the 8th film, Jason Takes Manhattan, everything went over to New Line Cinema, where they had the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise with Freddy Krueger, because they were kind of in the early stages of wanting to do, you know, Freddy versus Jason before it actually came out, like in the 2000s. So I have the first 8 Friday the 13th movies. I do not have Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, because that's a movie that I'm not really a fan of. So, and then of course there's Jason X, where Jason goes to space. I actually like that one, but I don't have it yet, because I haven't been able to find a DVD copy of it yet that's cheap enough for me to get. And most of the time I see it, it is with, you know, Jason Goes to Hell, or it's with Freddy vs. Jason, which I already have Freddy vs. Jason on a separate one too. So, and I don't have the remake of Friday the 13th with Jared Padalecki from Supernatural, but I like that one too. So, but this collection is the first 8 Friday the 13th movies. So, I have, I think they're all rated, because they're all rated R, except for this edition of Friday the 13th. I have it's uncut, so it has an unrated sticker on it. But so of course everybody should know what Friday the 13th is. It's about Jason, you know, Voorhees. If you haven't ever seen Friday the 13th, I won't get into too much detail of it, but of course, you know, there's a killer killing people in the woods at Camp Crystal Lake. So it goes through the series, and Friday the 13th, I like the first one. It's a good film. Of course, some people know the twist about it. If you've never seen it, I won't, you know, spoil the twist, even if you have learned about it through pop culture osmosis, because everybody should know it by now. And if you don't, you've probably seen Scream 2, which kind of spoils it a little bit too. Not Scream 2 as in the second one, Scream as in Scream, the first one, because it kind of spoils it a little bit. Part 2, of course, continues the first one, and I think they all kind of go in a chronological order. So everything that happens in a, you know, chronological timeline, where it does kind of shift in years, but it still goes in order. So it's not like we go to the past and then we go to the future and then we come back to the present. It all happens in a linear kind of timeline, but still, the way it skips, though, it seems like most of these movies, they were made in the 80s, seem like they should take place in the 90s, but you can definitely tell they're 80s films. But Part 2 picks up right where Part 1 leaves off, and Part 3 picks up right exactly where Part 2 ends, and so on, and all that. The third one, when it was first released, it was released in 3D. So you can watch the third one in 3D, and some of the prints have it where it's like in 2D, but they still have it as Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. So then of course there's the fourth one, which was supposed to be the final chapter of Jason Voorhees, but it wasn't. And that's the one that has Crispin Glover and Corey Feldman in it. So and then part 5 is, you know, A New Beginning. A lot of people don't like that one because it's I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's never seen any of these movies, but a lot of people don't like it because it kind of has like a red herring copycat kind of killer to it, and so and then of course there's the 6th one, Jason Lives. So again, you thought it was over, but they came back again, and this is kind of where it starts to get a little bit more of the humor in it. That it's kind of cheesy humor. It's not really, you know, very dark humor, but you know, there's a little bit more of a kind of comedic thing going on with it. And then part 7 is Friday the 13th, The New Blood, where I think they were trying to kind of make it like Jason versus Carrie, and it's a favorite among a lot of Friday the 13th franchise fans. And then, of course, there's the last Paramount movie, Jason Takes Manhattan. And Manhattan isn't really in this a lot as you may think it is, but I guess that was their kind of tag for it. Like, Jason comes to New York, and you know, we're all in trouble because he's now in the big city. He's no longer just killing kids in the woods. It'd be great if it was like that, but it isn't. So, but pardon me. As I've said, after this, the rights for Jason went to New Line, and then we got Jason Goes to Hell. So that's when it kind of went a little downhill for people anyway, and then Jason went to space, and then we had Freddy versus Jason, and then we got rebooted. So, and then we're supposed to be getting rebooted again. So as a kid, Jason probably didn't scare me as much as Freddy and Chucky kind of did, because those were the posters that were up in the little tiny video store close to the children's section that scared me. And you know, Jason wears a hockey mask, so I guess he didn't scare me or intimidate me as much as like Freddy or Chucky did. But so first 8 Friday the 13th movies. So, and the last thing I'm going to talk about, this video, I know it's running very long, but I didn't intend for it to be this long. But speaking of franchises of horror movies, I have got Chucky. I've got Child's Play movies. So, like I said, when I was younger, the Child's Play posters freaked me out because they were always up on the walls. But, so, this one is the first 6 Child's Play movies. Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky. If you don't know about it, Child's Play is, it begins with the murder of killer Charles Lee Ray, played by Brad Dourif, and his soul gets transferred into the body of a good guy doll, Chucky. And the first 3 movies, he goes about trying to have his soul go into the body of Andy Barclay. He starts as a little boy and goes up into being a teenager. And then the 4th one, Bride of Chucky, veers off into a different tangent where we were introduced to Tiffany, who used to be Chucky's lover before he was transferred into a doll, and she tries to bring him back, and then she ends up being put into the body of a doll, which goes into Seed of Chucky, which is not my favorite one of the franchise. I don't think it's a favorite of a lot of people. And then after that, we veered off to kind of go back to the original darker tone of the first Child's Play movie, because as it progressed, they got a little bit cheesier. It was still dramatic horror, but still very kind of cheesy. And when we got back to Curse of Chucky, it opened up a new storyline that involved Charles Lee Ray's past, and introduced us to Mika, played by Fiona Dorff, who is Brad Dourif's daughter. And then it brought us to, as of right now, the most recent one, Cult of Chucky, where we continue the Mika story, and we bring back storylines from the original Child's Play and Bride of Chucky when we veered off into that other tangent. So it took me the longest time to find a collection that had all of these movies, because I always found ones where they started at Child's Play 2 and went after that, but they never had the original Child's Play in it. So I was so glad when they released this on there. So since this video is running along, rankings, go with Child's Play. It's the original. It's the best. Child's Play 2 is fine. It's not one of my favorite movies because the story is dumb. It's mostly because I don't like a lot of characters in the second one except for Andy and his foster sister, Kyle. Everybody else in 2 is kind of a jerk. So, Child's Play 3 is okay. Still not a lot of people in there that you know, kind of sympathize for and want to cheer them on, except, again, for Andy. Bride of Chucky is my favorite. I think it's the one that really got me into wanting to go back and discover the original movie, even though when I was younger, they freaked me out, and I didn't want to watch them. Seed of Chucky is, I can't even describe it. I would just skip it if you wanted to, and just say that everything ends with Bride of Chucky. And when we go back to Curse of Chucky, I like it. It goes back to the darker tone of the first movie, and it kind of reveals a little bit more about our main villain's origins and kind of motives and stuff. And it's got a little bit of dark humor in it, but it's not that bad. And then, of course, you go into Cult of Chucky. I'd watch this one if you go through all of the movies, except you don't have to watch Seed of Chucky. How often can I say it? You don't need to watch it. It's got its good points, but it's more cheesy than any other movie in the entire Child's Play franchise. But so basically, first four movies, skip the 5th one, then go back. So this is probably the longest video that I've had talking about it, but I forgot that I had like movie collections of franchises. So that's today's video of suggestions, and I will see you with more horror movies for your Halloween viewing pleasure next time. Have a good day.